last video of the day for this issue, because I kind of got over the command directive. I've done one in the past, the swag book version, which was a 256 page model. I don't have it with me. I was going to go down the library here in a little bit. I left that out in the truck, but basically I start with the Rhodes, Fermats, and Beals. They're not super heavy-duty mathematics when you understand them. They're trick questions, real heavy-duty quantum physics of how they're applied and finding an integer. Alright, I probably lost half the crowd right there. But think about it like stone dog. Pallet is A. Pallet with specific stone is A or BY. You know, this number of A pallets and A stones is AX. You know, it's quantum based. There's a lot of different positions, but in this gravity specifics, it's going to lay out the AX plus BY equals CZ from an AX BX system. It could have been this pallet, it could have been that stone, it could have been this variation, it could have been that employee. We don't know any of that yet. Jump on the planet Earth and the mass of the Earth changes and the Hadron Collider gets a little fucking weirder than it was before, but it can't calculate that in antimatter, dark matter particles. Go figure. They think they do, but they don't. But that's an A abruptly long sequence of terms. Could be the day, could be the week, could be the year, could be the day with this person in it, that order in it. I don't know the term other than the given name, which is an apple, gravity, basic topology and topography, landscaping of a given name, term, its specific definition, its definition inverted. I've started with the end result of definition. I have to tell that by a name of a given number, which is an integer. Here we're saying X, Y, and Z, not 25 pieces. Not this landscaper's done, or 5 of those done in this much time, which is another AX. Alright, as soon as you know that stuff, you kind of can drop it. You don't need that anymore. That's this specific thing and this specific company. Whatever's going on. It gives you a big advantage. You can be quicker with a lot of stuff. You smashed into that wall hard enough. Alright, beyond that, you start to break that down in form states. What's a checklist? A name, a definition, is an inventory of banks of terms. Basically, the Military Joint Chief of Staff built a STEM dictionary, engineering, chemistry, that is STEM, to be a military Joint Chief of Staff, because this is a war. I'm using these terms as a bullet downrange in a specific number pattern, again, A, B, whatever. Back to reciprocating AB in a given mass gap problem, Ying's-Meals mass gap. Look at the book. You know, sometimes when you're talking about the orders, I'm doing this saw, and I do the simplest zero cut. How do you just lay out the table? Every stone is like that. I might put cribbings on there, but it's still the same zero system. Things might change a little bit, right? To this wild stone or any one of those in there, you can't go with every page that works out into this OSHA layout for every piece of a manager's book or an owner's book. I've had some of my own stuff, small business principles and invention premises and things like that, which we'll talk about later into this directive book. You know, manager safety stuff is where you usually go when you're doing the meat grinders, because you always want them to step up. If you have more generals that understand less, you know, I only need so many chiefs and so many Indians and X is X, that get it, you'll have a better company. They'll work at an average pace and no one pick it up to do certain things, because look, if you don't, it's going to hurt you. You ever heard this conversation? It's general relativity is what it is. Physics. But at this moment I'm using psychology and being the dominant feature here, and you're going to listen.
I really want to make something special for him. There you go, you're my partner now.
You usually don't do that. You keep the ball moving. You're always pushing it uphill. Friction equation. Anyways, before we get too heavy into it, those are going to transition into, you know, specifically, you know, mine's a general STEM resume, because I'm a general. I could take this to war and reference how to train officers. Landscaper systems are battlefields. How to do a specific biometric system to how many pieces per million you can do at this thing, or how many bullets you can push, how many push-ups you can do is a workout. But, you know, they just informs, which are forces, to a given specific end result. So again, you know, each of those become an invention premise, you know, of X, Y's, and Z's that make up the notes, the breakdowns, whether I do a drawing of it or how I schematic that drawing out. They help you build those systems. Each of those definitions in those terms of battleship has a different one than aircraft carrier, but yet they're both a ship when you reduce that term, or divide it, or cross multiply and math. Alright, just to They ask you to. You don't collect the $10 million STEM money unless you can. You don't get a direct physics class in a college setting unless you can. You don't own the fucking planet unless you can. Especially this region right here. All that I You ever heard an employee say, "This is my machine"? And the boss was like, "Carry on." Gravity.
If we didn't glue that in the overflow now, that could have cracked.
We're not talking about this extreme case. That's a mathematics principle for you. YouTube it. Heavy dense rock jumping off the boat there, or just a pebble carrying an Aristotelian's generalized model that should work no matter what you're doing. See, look, when you look at, if you use that equation, the boat does. It's just at a micron level of I jump on the planet Earth, the Hadron Collider can't pick up on the change in the mass, and it's not going to look like anything. It's going to look like dark matter. It matters, but it's at such a small level of the fractal of the calculation that it doesn't. When you jump into the mathematics there, we're not using gravity force, or gravity equals F1, M1, M2, this second and that second. I jumped, that changes the gravity. If I jumped in the middle of the day when the gantry saw I was doing something instead of what I was supposed to process second for second, guess what? Gravity. Shit's going to stop 1 second. That thing's going to divert a little bit. Straight line string theory. Every one of your employees has the chance to know this stuff, and you can make them better. How do you get better sales off of that? Well, all my guys are quantum physicists. They're all Masons. They're all general relativity experts. I had one kid come in here and crushed it. He does it in safety experts. He did fucking, look at that pallet right there. That muddy stone fucking pebble in the middle of the goddamn bay. That's gravity to him. He'll pick that shit up with his mind, writing a directive, turning that into law about how that shit's supposed to run every fucking day, because that's OSHA standards about how that fucking piece of machinery is supposed to work all day. And he'll pick it up. He ain't gonna put it off on somebody else. If he's got a second, it's there. It's always there. You're constitutionally obligated to find it. Literally. People hate it when I tell them that. You don't have enough time to do them all. I'm gonna tell you, I'm general. I'm doing this one. Get the hell out of my way. No. It makes sense when you use it. Yeah, for me, it's probably talking to higher ranking officials right now, and I have to, because right now I got to get the job. I got to get the slot. So we got the forms, some of the basic mathematics. That turns into your resumes. You know, your names, your headings, you know, the addresses, the times you were there. Get the simple stuff that you're going to just use as a real application. It makes those apps go like that when you fill them out, which is a big deal. Think about an order form. I had some of that stuff written out, all the given numbers, the product number, how many numbers I need to have done for this given set number for what this saw does and what it can crank out per hour. Think about it. All the different form states, all are a different thing. They're an invention, a scaled system, and ones and zeros played out on X and Y's and paper, right? All right, good. So they're also how you're going to do whatever small business platform you're going to do. That's how you base your invention. The invention you might have might be stone, might be a hillbilly spinner, a trident, a bow fishing rig that you invent, bird houses out of scrap stone that you use out of the backlog, you know, doing whatever. Even just managing space on flat ground, making it better. You know, that could be what you do. That's all you may do. Here's my best example for this one. I forget whether it's psychology or physics, but one of the examples is, you know, professor asks the student, "What are you good at?" "I'm good at telling people I don't give a fuck." Sometimes as a manager, you have to tell a person, "I don't give a fuck. The timeline has to be this." You know, and I'm not going to get into the specifics or the, what was I talking about with that boat and that rock, the extreme cases. We're talking about this general model. It can causally reference an amechanical, non-Newtonian state. Can. War, weighing a resistance. As a general, you have to know how to do positive and negative and balance that in a given ratio of 0, 1, 2, or the mechanics that Tesla was talking about with the power of 3, which is number theory, again, based on 0 has to make 1, 0 has to make 2, which is 4 states in a Planck spectrum of really determining the particle you're looking at, and it takes an analyzation of physics to psychologically describe it in this state. Because if you just do it mathematically, it's going to be A's and 1's and 0's and X's and Y's, and we can't speak that language directly. And it's a little different, half basis, quarter basis, a third when you're dealing with a saw or something. But so beyond that, Invention premises, business models, resumes. You know, those resumes again are small pieces of a business. They could be an entire business, A and B, 0 and 1, 0 and A, you know, and all that crazy shit. Then you're going to get into syndicate design. That's what I like to do. You got 5 people around you. Nobody's in charge. Everybody design. Send it. Go ahead. Everybody throw down a play. I don't want you to tell me what. I want you to look at that evaluation. Is that the same thing you would think of? Because that's how we determine what we call this thing, why we're going to do it, and what's going to be the end result. Now, even a general is held to the will of his people, right? You know, so when all of them agree against what he has to say, because a general is supposed to know the will of the people. We're all supposed to have the same way of thinking if you understand Sun Tzu, which we're going to be getting at. It's part of calligraphy. I actually make you, to determine whether you get a general STEM resume, you have to write Sun Tzu word for word. Base its calligraphy. Understand Lil is an X irrational number of a given state, a walled fortress. You have to know how many arrows, chariots, or X, A, Y kind of things. Calculations, digits, corn, farm, to determine. I can corn better than you. You're robbing me, doing all that stuff, and later on we'll get to that. Your dictionary of terms. I don't care if you go specifically chemistry, physics, engineering, or a STEM dictionary, going through a Webster's dictionary to separate those things. Hell, you do it in Spanish to determine whether that's what that is, to just better speak Spanish. It's going to be rudimentary and basic at first, but that's a fundamental skill that'll help you build a frame. When you name it, you can describe it, and you can break it down into multiple spectrums of pieces, how I look at it to set it up at the 0 state, so a trainee might use it, or how OSHA might discern what that has to be to get the insurance model properly worked out, and always make sure your hammer's where it needs to be, or your lawnmower, or your whatever needs to be exactly where it needs to be. It helps you build the skill. And just a word seems like it's easy. To really describe it in this point in time might change some of the fundamental numbers. Can you handle that curve? It moves causally. That fast, the second you start writing it. Their battle plans, how to train general, how to use the land, Sun Tzu. This is quotes and quatrains. This is an education base. This is a religion. I use God as government here. God is a stone dock. It's gravity for my life, and to a certain extent, to a degree on the spectrum, and I do sell myself to that to a certain degree, and if I make the wrong choices, I'll let you know. Yeah, that's what I'll tell you. And again, quotes and quatrains go a long way. Physics quotes, psychology quotes, you know, sometimes that's what answers the definition to what you're dealing with now, to name it and describe it, to do what you need it to do. Telepathy, telekinesis, pyrokinesis, if you want to burn it down, you drop the right quote, man, there goes those walls in that walled fortress, and you know it, 'cause it's like Planck and whoever, whatever, you know, whatever biblical sense you want to do. Sometimes it has to be a given conversation. Sometimes they're very broad. Sometimes, usually they're worded in a way that's mathematical in nature. But again, mathematics is a tool we create. It's only mathematics until I describe it physically. Here's the apple. You know, that apple's rock. It's those two things at once. How can you do that? Well, physics has this wave function, this particle, which is quantum mechanics, and now you're all over the damn place. Could be the quote. A cheeseburger is not a cheeseburger when you understand it, when you really start to look at it. That's Planck. It's a spectrum game. It's a pickle farm. It's a dairy, or it's a dairy if it's got cheese on it. It's a cow. It's the processing of the cow, how the mechanics and all this works out. You know, the wave function breaks down, but the particle can't be measured at that point. You know, it's all of those things. Any one can be measured, but when you determine that against the mathematical wave function, that mathematical against the Big Bang breaks down, because each of those are their entire universe. They're not stacked, per se. Well, they have a stacking effect. It may look like a manager is a manager or a boss is a boss, but any employee could decide to leave. Any employee could be the president, could be the general. You can make a play. You can do one of those things. That's one of the beautiful things we got in America. It's why we take Russia at the end of this. It's why we take the UN, even though we give it. We got the experts. We're trained. So who are you going to grab? Who are you going to ask? You know, well, look at the military. Ever see overseas? What's going on? I'm just term dropping here. And this is the command directive. Catch you on the next one.